The National Desk, America's News, now.
Winter warnings sound again. Millions of Americans brace for snow and ice. Where and when the storm will hit.
Without such a plan that is credible and that they can execute, we do not support a full-scale military operation there going ahead.
Concerns for the next phase of war in Gaza continue as airstrikes in the enclave's most populous city call into question whether Israel can keep President Biden on board. And then stopping drunk driving before it happens inside a new federal proposal looking to make our roads safer for everyone. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. We begin with a live look over our National Desk radar as a massive storm pummels toward the northeast, putting as many as 20 million people under winter storm warnings in advance of a potential nor'easter. And a live look now over Amsterdam, New York, one of the areas under a winter storm warning, in addition to parts of Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. With 8 inches of snow expected in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams said residents there could see the biggest snow in 2 years.
We've been fortunate. Let's be clear. We have not had any significant snowfall for quite some time. In fact, it was amazing how little salt we had to use last year. But, the time has come. Mother Nature does what she wants to do.
And you can stay ahead of the storm with us all evening long right here at the National Desk. Just head to thenationaldesk.com. Tonight, in the first meeting since American troops were killed in Jordan in a drone strike by Iranian-backed militias, President Biden welcoming the King of Jordan to Washington to talk about how to scale back the war that's offsetting a major spike in tensions in the region. This as panic grows in Gaza after a night of heavy Israeli airstrikes 24 hours into phase 1 of Israel's military operation in Rafah that forces say will ultimately shift into a ground invasion. Word that President Joe Biden is growing increasingly frustrated behind the scenes with his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu, who has moved forward with an operation in Gaza's Rafah, despite the fact that there are concerns that it is now sheltering more than 1.4 million civilians, most of which were forced to relocate to the border city and are unclear on where they can go to seek safety. The White House weighing in.
We don't believe that it's advisable to go in a major way in Rafah without a proper, executable, effective, and credible plan for the safety of the more than 1 million Palestinians that are taking refuge in Rafah. They've left the north, and they certainly went south out of Khan Yunis to try to get out of the fighting. So Israel has an obligation to make sure that they can protect them.
The tension intensifying as new details emerge in the rescue of 2 Israeli hostages from an apartment building in that same town. Those 2 men have been identified as 60-year-old Fernando Simon Marman and 70-year-old Luis Har. Tears of joy cried as 2 men reunited with their families today after 128 days in captivity. But the rescue operation unleashed yet another tragedy in a war that has reportedly killed more than 28,000. Overnight, at the same time as that raid rescue, an additional 100 Palestinians were killed, according to health authorities in Hamas-run Gaza. Although the U.S. designated terrorist organization does not differentiate between militants and civilian deaths. The Hamas-run health ministry, however, says that the majority killed are women and children, including more than 12,000 kids and young teens. Also tonight, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin in critical care, the critical care unit of Walter Reed Medical Center. The secretary was rushed to the hospital yesterday for a bladder issue. It comes just a month after he was released from Walter Reed after secretly being admitted to treat complications from prostate cancer surgery. He is scheduled to testify at a hearing later this month over the lack of transparency. Austin has canceled some appearances and transferred his duties to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. The White House forced to respond to questions about Austin's ability to serve.
Does the president have any concerns that with his medical problems, the secretary can no longer serve?
Not at all.
And right now, we are learning more about the shooter in the Texas megachurch owned by Joel Osteen outside of Houston yesterday. Police have identified her as Genesee Moreno, but also said she has used male aliases in the past, including the name Jeffrey Escalante. Police said they are going through anti-Semitic writings of Moreno and say her weapon had the words "Free Palestine" on it, but no known motive has been identified. Law enforcement records show Moreno had at least 6 prior arrests before yesterday. Police also confirmed the 7-year-old child critically injured in the shooting is Moreno's son. One other adult was injured and is being treated at a local hospital. Well, Donald Trump, he appeared in federal court in Florida today for a closed hearing in his classified documents case. The former president faces dozens of felony accounts on the case. He's accused of hoarding highly classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate and obstructing the FBI when the government tried to get them back. Today's hearing is to discuss how to handle evidence in the case. The trial is set for May 20th. Trump has denied any wrongdoing. Donald Trump has quite the week of legal battles ahead, not just today in Florida. Also, today was the deadline for him to ask the Supreme Court for a delay in his election interference trial. On Thursday, a New York judge will confirm the date for Trump's hush money trial, and an Atlanta judge will grapple with District Attorney Fani Willis's alleged improper relationship. We're also on the watch for whether the Supreme Court will let Trump be banned from state presidential ballots and how much a New York judge decides he has to pay for misstating the value of properties in his business empire. While in Georgia, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis faces trouble of her own. The Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee says she could be disqualified from the case against Trump and his co-defendants. Judge McAfee said today that if the allegations of an inappropriate relationship with her co-counsel Nathan Wade against Willis are proven, that could warrant her dismissal. There will be an evidentiary hearing on the matter on Thursday. A Tennessee manhunt is now in its 4th day. The award for information leading to the capture of Kenneth DeHart has been up to at least $100,000. Over the weekend, DeHart's brother and girlfriend were arrested and charged with aiding and abetting DeHart while he was been on the run. DeHart, considered armed and dangerous, has been on the loose since he was accused of shooting and killing Deputy Greg McGowan during a traffic stop last Thursday. Deputy Shelby Eggers, 22 years old, was also shot and injured in the incident. Former CEO and senior vice president of First Energy Corporation were indicted today for failing to turn themselves in on bribery charges. Ohio Attorney General announcing that they were initially charged in a $60 million bribery scheme on Friday. This scheme is related to the scandal that put the former Ohio Speaker, Republican Larry Householder, behind bars for 20 years over the summer. And President Joe Biden's campaign joined TikTok over the weekend, drawing criticism from leaders in Washington looking to ban the social media platform. Many are questioning whether it's okay for the president's campaign to be on the platform, especially since the app is banned on most federal devices. National correspondent Janae Bowens has an in-depth look at the controversy.
You get in trouble if I told you.
President Joe Biden's new campaign TikTok account is causing him some trouble. It appears he's flip-flopped on an app that he has not only expressed national security concerns over, but also banned on the devices of nearly 4 million federal workers.
China, as they seek to leverage digital technologies and Americans' data in ways that can present harm and risk to our national security, clearly. The White House does not use TikTok.
The move met with fierce criticism from Republican Senator Josh Hawley, who posted Biden campaign bragging about using a Chinese spy app, even though Biden signed a law banning it on all federal devices. The backlash over Biden's TikTok follows last month's Senate hearing, where social media CEOs, including TikTok's, were grilled about online sexual child exploitation.
We have a company that's a tool of the Chinese Communist Party that is poisoning the minds of America's children, in some cases driving them to suicide, and that at best the Biden administration is taking a pass on, at worst maybe in collaboration with.
Now, Biden's aides told us the account will be run entirely by the campaign team, who said they are incorporating security protocols to ensure safety, but they didn't give specifics about what that looks like.
Certainly on the surface, it looks dissonant or even hypocritical.
Paul Matsko with the Cato Institute says the Biden campaign is likely targeting younger voters. That's a key part of the Democratic base that Biden is struggling with.
Younger and perhaps more in tune with younger generations, folks on the Biden campaign are realizing it would be political disaster to fully cut off the campaign from TikTok because it's the platform that young people use.
But with the FBI, the FCC, and congressional leaders warning of TikTok's owner ByteDance possibly sharing user data with China's authoritarian communist government, the message might get muddled. In Washington, Janae Bowens for the National Desk.
All right, Janae, thank you. A Super Bowl ad controversy. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is apologizing for an ad made by a super PAC that evoked the 1960 campaign of his uncle, President John F. Kennedy. RFK Jr. says the ad was made without approval from his campaign. Other Kennedy relatives have called out RFK Jr.'s prior anti-vaccine rhetoric as appalling. Coming up, the world reacts to comments by the Trump campaign on the campaign trail. Does the U.S. have NATO's back, even if they don't pay? And wildfires are not just a problem in the Northwest. Air quality concerns are growing across the country. Just how many Americans are suffering from pollutants they breathe? Plus, the celebration is on in Kansas City. Super Bowl champions again. What we now know about when the fans will party with the team back in KC. Donald Trump's suggestion over the weekend that as president, he would not defend a NATO member who is not in good financial standing is being called out as an international security risk. The EU's top diplomat, foreign policy chief Josep Borrell, said today the military alliance cannot be dependent on the humor of the president of the United States.
Let's be serious. NATO cannot be an alliance a la carte. It exists or it not exist.
This follows the comments by NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg yesterday that he expects that regardless of who wins the presidential election, the U.S. will remain a strong and committed NATO ally. Donald Trump has often criticized NATO members for failing to meet their 2% of GDP obligations. Latest estimates from 2023 show only 11 of 31 countries are above the threshold. 1 in 4 Americans, roughly 83 million people, are exposed to unhealthy air quality every single year. This is according to the First Street Foundation, which analyzed data from the Air Quality Index. Last year, much of the Northeast suffered from the worst air quality seen since the 1960s due to smoke from Canadian wildfires. While in the Northwest, Washington, Oregon, and California area, people there are seeing a drop in air quality due to repeated wildfires in their region. First Street blames the growing concern on the effects of climate change. And the FDA has expanded the recall that could be behind a nationwide listeria outbreak linked to 2 deaths and dozens of hospitalizations. 16 products containing the affected cheeses have now been recalled, including taco and salad kits, over concerns that they may contain contaminated cheeses. All of this manufactured by Rizzo Lopez Foods. We're tracking an expanded FDA recall, and for more information, we're going to put it on our website. But they are under brand names such as 365 Whole Foods Market, Don Francisco, Tio Francisco. And if you have any, the company says you should throw them away immediately. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration closed its 7-year probe into power steering failures of Ford Fusion cars. The investigation started in 2016 after more than 500 complaints, those complaints being issued after the power steering suddenly failed. NHTSA's conclusion calls for no new recalls and said there was a declining failure trend during the extensive review. On the roads, gas prices keep going up. According to AAA, the average gallon of gas today costs $3.20. That's up 5 cents from last Monday's average and 13 cents from where we were just a month ago. $3.20 is still 22 cents lower than the average cost of a gallon of gas on this same day last year. Diesel fuel costs an average of $4 on Monday, and that's 56 cents less than where we were a year ago. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has just a week to agree on a date and location to sit down with the SEC in a probe of his Twitter takeover. A U.S. magistrate judge issued a formal tentative ruling over the weekend for Musk to testify once more on his $44 billion acquisition of the social media site. The SEC is looking into whether Musk followed the proper protocol when filing the required paperwork needed for purchasing Twitter stock. And new data out today showing the dangers of America's fastest growing game, pickleball. The American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons now says that over the last 20 years, fractures from pickleball-related injuries have jumped 200%. Pickleball has taken the country by storm lately. According to the USA Pickleball, the number of players taking up the game has nearly doubled in the last 2 years, rising from roughly 4.8 million in 2021 to 8.9 million in 2023. Every 39 minutes, one person is killed in a drunk driving crash in the United States. More than 13,000 people died in the year 2021 alone. Now, a bold federal proposal wants to stop drunk driving crashes before they happen by putting alcohol detection technology in every single new car. National investigative correspondent Lisa Fletcher reports.
That hit us doing approximately 125 miles per hour. And he split our car in half. And said drunk driver killed my 12-year-old son.
In a cruel irony, Darius Brown, a 6th grader, wrote a school paper about drunk driving.
In his essay, the one thing that I remember him saying was, people need to know that drinking and driving kills. And almost a year to the date, a drunk driver took his life. So I just take his words and I make his words my purpose.
Since her son's death in 2004, Vicki Brown has dedicated her life to ending drunk driving. The ticket, she believes, may be this proposal from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, that would require all new cars to have devices that can tell if you're drunk and stop or limit your ability to drive. There's a range of technologies being developed, like this one, using tiny cameras trained on drivers' pupils and passive breath sensors to determine blood alcohol content.
What does this technology mean broadly for Americans?
It means that 10,000 people, once widely deployed, will not be killed every year.
Kathy Chase is the president of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety.
Any sense of the reliability of the technology at this stage in the game?
I mean, any new technology is challenging, but this isn't really new. This has been discussed for literally decades. This is the point in time where we need to get it done.
While few argue with the wisdom of preventing drunk driving, there are privacy concerns around how data is used and the accuracy of the equipment that could prevent or limit vehicle operation. It's why even the makers of the technology are looking to the federal government to set standards. Caroline Chung supports the development of this technology at Magna International, a company manufacturing equipment to perform alcohol detection.
There needs to be regulation on the government side so that there's consensus within the automotive community on even the emission that we need to achieve. What are we trying to do?
Some car makers have already floated deploying their own passive alcohol detection technology. Absent federal standards, manufacturers would make the decisions when it comes to which devices to use, how the system responds when alcohol is detected, and what happens to the data gathered by those sensors. The agency that should have a determined path forward to complete the rulemaking on those issues is still posing questions for public comment, signaling it is far from ready to finalize anything. While the process drags on, for Vicki Brown, it shouldn't be about politics, party lines, or bottom lines.
Although we're looking out for everybody on the roads, we're also looking out for you. We're looking out for you to make sure that you get home safely. If you are getting behind the wheel and you get into a crash and you lose your life because you were drinking and driving, now your family is walking in the same walk that I'm walking in.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Lisa, thank you. And coming up, cell phones in schools, why another school district in the United States is trying to ban them from the classroom. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We do have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
How are you doing? Nuts, legumes, fresh produce, protein, and more.
Only one, sorry. We have to have enough for everybody.
Food Lifeline increased its distribution of food by 10% last year, but the demand rose by 60%.
Middle-income working families, working wages that still struggle with food insecurity.
Anyone who's been in a grocery store knows just how much more we're all paying for food. We're paying about 20 to 30% more for groceries now than we did just 2 or 3 years ago.
The problem and the need in our community is everywhere.
That's why Jim Wallen organizes food drives for Food Lifeline. And why Elizabeth Whiteside and her co-workers make volunteering here a priority.
We were just discussing that the food system is so broken
and how much of it goes to waste. It's ridiculous. And so to be able to help that process and get it to the people that need it that's really important to me.
MCC Public Safety Chief Stephen Weiss says his campus peace officers could have access to rifles as soon as this fall. Chief Weiss says the officers have been armed with handguns since 2009. Once the rifles are issued, officers will only access them during emergencies, namely active shooter threats.
I think I would be remiss in my role if I wasn't trying to plan for something like that. A lot of people come to this campus, a lot of families send their children here, a lot of adult learners come to MCC, and we want them to be as safe as possible, feel as safe as possible, and I want to have the best response to a multitude of scenarios.
He says adding rifles to their arsenal will better prepare the department and could decrease response time in critical events.
I've tried to stress throughout the process, our peace officers have the exact training that our local police do. So we're looking at adding a tool that's very acceptable.
A bill requiring students at public schools to hand their phones over to a school official during class time is being proposed. State representatives say this is not a ban of phones in schools.
It becomes just like any other personal use device or personal item, like your coat or your makeup or anything else. I've heard from teachers and parents alike, they like this bill, and I haven't received very much pushback from it.
I think once students get in a routine of saying, when they enter the school or enter the classroom, they have to put their phone in the designated area where they won't be able to access it. That will just become common, and as younger students matriculate through the schools, they'll just get used to that, and they'll know that that's happening in every school across the state.
Education scores are dropping since social media has become widely available, according to representatives.
There's just so much information out there that this is the direction that we know we need to go in.
Coming up, 3 times Super Bowl champions in just the last 5 years, and local schools in Kansas City, they are prepared for it. We will explain after the break. For the second year in a row, the Kansas City Chiefs hoisted the Lombardi Trophy as NFL champions, and they will now get to celebrate with their fans on Wednesday at 11 a.m. local time in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. Already, many local schools are alerting parents that they are closed for the day, attributing traffic as the top concern, as opposed to letting students attend the festivities. Some school districts are staying open because they've already lost multiple days to winter weather, but it sure is shaping up to be a fun party. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do thank you for joining us. I'm Amira David. Have a wonderful Monday.